Welcome to Nita's Excerpts from the Experts, 7-minute learning sessions with researchers and practitioners in the field of eating disorders and individuals who share their experiences. I'm your host, Sarah Bowie-Keaton. This week, our guest is J.D. Ouellette. She is a lived experience expert in eating disorders and the director of lived experience for Equip Health. Coming from her own lived experience of supporting her youngest child struggling with anorexia nervosa, JD channels her gratitude and personal and professional skill set into her profession of ensuring all families have access to the same psychoeducation, skills coaching, and support that made the difference for her family, enabled her daughter to achieve full, robust, long-term recovery. This week, our guest, JD, is going to talk to us about family-based treatment. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us, JD.
Thank you so much for having me.
What is the role of family in family-based treatment, or FBT, and how does this treatment work with someone's chosen family?
So the role of FBT overall is to empower the healthy people in the structure of the home to execute nutritional rehabilitation. Usually, oftentimes that involves weight gain, other things, but it's really using those healthy people, most commonly parents, as the supports, and really having the team consult with them to figure out the best way to do this within their family's structure, cultural, other things. With chosen family, that may play out a little bit differently, although FBT is wonderful for being able to include many, many people in the village, including grandparents, aunts and uncles, all sorts of people. And so we really are able to work with whatever your family is in order to skills coach, train with FBT.
And it does take a village, and it seems to me like the larger the support network, the better it is, probably.
That's absolutely true. And I think that sometimes I'll speak for myself as a parent who came into this, we are at our lowest moment in our lives. Usually, I would say that we're impacted by sort of a trauma brain as well. And so sometimes we don't always see what we have to draw from. One of the things I really encourage families to do is see who you can get to cook for you. I always sort of joke that if there was anything that should be a casserole illness, it's eating disorders, and we don't get casserole. So ask for them, ask for people to help you in the ways that you need support.
It is hard sometimes for people to ask for help. Is that part of the training at all when you work with families?
It absolutely is. Yeah. And I would say, sort of on a personal note, that was one of the things that I had to learn. I was very comfortable being the helper, being the helpee, not my strongest skill set. And it was actually a girlfriend who said to me, "I'm really worried about you because I've never heard you use the O word before." And I was like, "What is the O word?" And she said, "Overwhelmed." And she said, if you're overwhelmed, you ask for help, right? The world around you is used to you not needing help, so nobody's going to help you unless you ask for it. And it was actually one of those things in FBT that I think actually improved things for the long term. So absolutely, we do talk to people about where you draw from. Sometimes your coworker bakes. They love to bring things into work, like give them some recipes. Sometimes the neighbor isn't working anymore and might be available to do breakfast when you train them while you get to work on time. There's all sorts of ways that we can bring a larger village into FBT and make it just that much more doable.
What are some ways caregivers can find support in this process? And I think you already touched on some of that, but expand on that a little bit for me.
Yeah, I'm a huge, huge fan of connecting with other parents who are, or families, or who are in the same situation. Huge fan of the Feast community, Families Empowered and Supporting Treatment of Eating Disorders, which doesn't just do FBT, but there are a lot of people who are experienced with FBT. So connecting, whether it's through a NEDA group, an ANAD group, an Alliance group, Feast, whatever you can, or as part of a more structured program, reach out to other people. Multifamily support really does have a strong basis for being helpful, as does peer-to-peer support.
And what role can mentorship play in family-based treatment?
So mentorship is a huge, huge added component to FBT that can be really life-changing, really change the trajectory of things, both for the person with the eating disorder themselves having a peer mentor and for the family members having peer mentors. And that can even extend to siblings having support from a sibling who's lived this before. So I think some of the things that I think are most important about peer support are, number one, normalization. I've dealt with a lot of stuff in my almost 60 years, and this was by far the hardest thing, including providing end of life care to my mom and sister who died of cancer, because it's just such a singular illness with so many just very strange pieces to it. So normalization of what you're going through, exchanging tips and tricks, just talking to other people who get it, because no matter how good your friends are, if they haven't had a person with an eating disorder, they just really cannot know the thing. And then I think hope is a huge piece of peer mentorship. So if you're getting help from someone, it should be someone who themselves is in recovery or has helped someone to recover. And just that in and of itself, showing you that recovery is possible, is invaluable.
Yeah, talking with what you were saying with having peer groups, I think it is such a psychological release when someone understands what you're going through. It's that understanding, being able to acknowledge the hardship that you're going through, and having other people who have been through it to understand you and to validate the feelings that you're having. It's going to be really tough. So having that support helps a lot.
Yes, I would say the feelings that you're having, as well as the things that you have to do. Speaking from the family perspective, fighting an eating disorder is really counterintuitive for many reasons. One of them being, in some ways, all the things that we've been taught culturally, socioculturally, in the media and stuff is what caused eating disorders. Some of those things are things that you have to do for your kids in terms of being somewhat controlling about what they eat, things like that. And so it's just very strange. You're like, I was taught all those things cause an eating disorder, and now I'm being told that these are ways to help my kid recover from an eating disorder. It's a lot to wrap your mind around.
So FBT seems like it works well for like younger individuals through the age that they're living at home. Is that?
I would say I would broaden it even a little bit more. FBT for transition age youth, I think, is something that's really coming into its own, and I think it's really an important and impactful thing to say. So I would say often living at home, but not necessarily. You can individualize and tweak FBT, and so we sort of continued FBT via a recovery roadmap or contract once she went to college. So we probably had an outsized influence in terms of what traditional treatment would say was okay. I drove 16 hours round trip once a month to eat with her for 2 years. Some people might have said that was a little over the top, or enmeshed, in air quotes, which is my least favorite word. And she will describe it now as that was an amazing piece of accountability for me to keep me there until everything was solid. So I think, and I also want to put in a plug for older teens. Very often people will say, oh, once they're 14, over 14, no, it doesn't really work. Over 15, that's not what we're finding to be true at all. In fact, it's the best case for many people to recover. And a common thing I hear is, but they should be doing this, that, or the other thing developmentally at that age, in our case at 17, right? And I had a really great conversation with a physician about this once, but that was saying, but it's not appropriate for you to know that much about your daughter's life at this age. And I said, is it appropriate for my daughter to be able to feed herself to physical and mental health with nobody's help or support? Well, yeah. And I said, okay, we're going to do that one. And then we can do the one you're talking about. So it's not that we're not going to do these things. We're just putting things in the right order of operations. If we remove parents before we remove the eating disorder, very often we are leaving the eating disorder. So using that loving, healthy ecosystem and individualizing FBT, really super helpful. So very often I think that parents or the other caregivers in the home, sometimes it's grandparents, it's a lot of different people. I do think in some ways, because eating disorders can be so hard to beat, because not everyone wants to get rid of their eating disorder for so many reasons, that leaving it up to them when we have an alternative can in some ways be just in some ways cruel to them, right? When we have other options. So I think of this as sort of we're we're kind of dragging them to the place where they can then participate too. So we're rowing the boat, and then when we get to a certain place, we could row the boat together, and then at a certain point, we're going to get out of the boat and they're rowing the boat all on their own.
Love the analogy. Makes a lot of sense. Well, thank you for all the incredible work that you do and the amazing experiences you have been through, and taking those experiences and turning them into something positive and helping so many families.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure. I was a teacher before this, and this is just a different type of education and teaching. And again, so blessed to be able to see in our own lives what the power of what research shows us: early aggressive intervention, nutrition rehabilitation to a high enough weight, continued oversight, all of those while the brain finishes healing. All of those components are what led my daughter to wellness, and to being about a year away from being an FBT therapist herself.
Oh, that's incredible. That's wonderful to hear. Well, thank you so much for being part of this program and sharing your knowledge. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
NEDA's mission is to support individuals and families affected by eating disorders and serve as a catalyst for prevention, cures, and access to quality care. NEDA offers programs and services designed to help you find the help and support you need. Whether you have been personally affected by an eating disorder or care about someone who has, recovery is possible, and we're here to support you.